Mercedes' start to the 2024 Formula One season was not what they would have wanted. Following a massive overhaul of their car during the winter, the Silver Arrows were keen to refine their incredible competitiveness after 2 years of disappointment. 5th and 7th in the season's opening race didn't exactly blow anyone away though. But with any new car, there are always teething problems, and Mercedes have found a massive issue, which cost them a huge amount of lap time in Bahrain. But can they solve the problem in Saudi Arabia? And will their additional upgrades get Hamilton or Russell into podium contention? Let's find out. Mercedes' performance at the Bahrain Grand Prix was confusing, it's fair to say. During practice, both in pre-season and on the race weekend, they looked pretty good. Certainly competitive in lap times with the front of the field. Qualifying wasn't quite the same story, though George Russell impressed by getting onto the second row, with a time just 3/10 slower than pole sitter Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton's 9th place was far less impressive, but he claimed afterwards that he had set his car up to be more competitive in the race than in qualifying, a claim that George Russell said was incorrect the day after. Make of that what you will. When it came to race day, neither driver managed to match their good testing and practice performance though. Despite a good start, Russell was powerless to stop the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc taking 4th place late on, despite the Monegasque suffering from an incredibly dangerous brake cooling problem, which was causing his car to try and wreck itself every time he had to slow for a corner. Hamilton failed to make the most of that race pace preferential setup he had spoken about as well. He split the McLarens by finishing in 7th position, but 2 places gained during the race isn't what anyone would call a charge through the field. In the end, it was a pretty underwhelming showing from Mercedes, especially as many people were hoping for a really competitive new car that would give Lewis a chance at a world championship in his final season with the team. No one was expecting it of course, but there was still hope. Luckily though, there is reason to hold on to that hope yet, as Mercedes had a huge issue during the Bahrain Grand Prix that cost them massive amounts of lap time during the race, and there are upgrades on the way that could help them at the low downforce circuit in Jeddah. There was also a specific problem which affected just Lewis in Bahrain that the team will have fixed for this Saturday's Grand Prix. Putting in the laps in the Bahrain Grand Prix as he raced his way to 7th place, Hamilton reported over the radio, "My seat is broken." There was nothing the team could do about it at the time. This isn't endurance racing after all, no time for a seat swap. So his race engineer Pete Bonington could only reply, "Okay, copy." Hamilton later told the media about just how bad the problem was for him. "Honestly, I think I was braking into turn 1 and then the seat just shifted and my left butt cheek fell basically. I think it just cracked, just snapped, something snapped. So then it was moving around for a while, like my butt was in the air. On one side it was up in the air." A broken seat might not sound like the end of the world, but for an F1 driver, that small disconnect from the car can have a huge impact on how they feel their way around an F1 lap. It's also incredibly dangerous. If you crash and there's a problem with your seat, who knows what might happen? That unsettled and disconnected feeling is going to affect you mentally, and that's going to cost you lap time. Fortunately for Hamilton, or perhaps unfortunately, it was just a loose seatbelt that was causing him to disconnect from his seat. Andrew Chauvelin said in the Mercedes debrief, "The seats are obviously designed to be able to be lifted out because in the event of an accident, the driver comes out in his seat. And ultimately, the thing that holds the seat in the car is the driver who's strapped into his seatbelts. The only thing we can think is that if Lewis was ever so slightly loose. Being loose in an F1 car, pulling the speeds they do, is not going to make the job any easier for the driver. But a loose seatbelt was far from Mercedes' biggest issue in Bahrain. During the race, both Mercedes drivers had to slow down to cool their engines, which meant their tyres fell out of the operating window, costing them more time. George Russell fell from 3rd on the grid to finish 5th in the season opening race, 46 seconds behind winner Max Verstappen. He believes that the cooling fault which compromised both of the Mercedes cars' performance in Bahrain cost them at least 15 seconds of race time. Russell therefore believes the car's potential is much higher than they showed in Bahrain. "I think when we saw the pace on FP2, that was genuine," he said. The team's cars headed that session, Lewis Hamilton leading Russell. "Probably not everybody turned up their engines, but we were genuinely fast. Then in the race we had some really big cooling issues that caught us by surprise. We know there was at least a 15-second lost just in the battery and the power, probably more after you consider the effect it had on the tyres. Just an extra couple of seconds in stint 1. When I had Checo behind me, it would have been pretty handy. So I think we would have been in the fight for P2 for the podium with Checo and Carlos. But definitely, we didn't show our true potential. George's conservative estimate of 15 seconds of lost time would have put him 10 seconds ahead of 4th place Charles Leclerc at the finish line, just 5 seconds behind 3rd place Carlos Sainz. It's not as simple as that though. If he was able to push the car more during the race, then defending against those who passed him would have been easier, and the extra time added for being able to manage the tyres better would have helped. The team's technical director James Allison said their cooling problem was the biggest unanswered mystery from the weekend. The team went into the race confident in their cooling simulations, having spent 3 days testing at the Bahrain International Circuit the previous week. Talking about how painful the engine cooling problems were for the team, Allison said, "The fact that we got it wrong by more than 1 or 2 degrees is extremely unusual and quite punishing, because once the cars are above the limit that the engine guys will guarantee the engine to, we just have to back off the car. We have to back off the throttle at the end of the straights. We have to turn down some of the modes of the engine just to make them survive. That just robs you of lap time, it robs you of tyre temperature, and it ruins your race effectively." Solving the mystery of what went wrong in Bahrain is a challenge that Mercedes have to address for this weekend's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, but Allison is confident the W15 can be more competitive. "We absolutely didn't get the best from the car in Bahrain," he said. "I hope sincerely that we will deliver a car that has the correct cooling level. I hope that we will get the qualifying and race balance in a place where the drivers are complimentary about its sweet handling, rather than being rather critical about it being difficult to manhandle around the corners. I'm just looking for a clean weekend." While any cooling changes for this weekend will be mostly under the cover of the external bodywork, there will be changes to the louvres on the engine cover, so keep an eye out for anything changing. It isn't just engine cooling that Mercedes will be focusing on for Saturday's Grand Prix though. They fitted their first upgrade for the season to the W15. A new rear wing is set to debut at the high-speed Jeddah circuit this weekend. Mercedes' new low-downforce rear wing features an intriguing and extreme cutout in the middle and is designed to minimize drag and maximize top speed. Whether Mercedes stick with the design after Thursday's testing remains to be seen, but it's raised plenty of eyebrows in the paddock. The 3.8-mile layout of the Jeddah circuit features long, winding, full-throttle segments, and by average speed, it's the second fastest circuit on the calendar behind Monza in Italy. The team will be hoping that with this new drag-dropping rear wing, they'll be able to make the most of those massive, full-throttle segments. Obviously, full-throttle running will work the engine to the absolute maximum as well, so if they can't solve those engine cooling problems for Saturday's race, then they may lose even more lap time than they did in Bahrain. Are you surprised that Mercedes were hamstrung so much by engine temperatures in Bahrain? And with that solved, do you think they can challenge for podiums and maybe even push Max? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.